Have you ever felt like the world is moving too fast? Like no matter how hard you try to keep up, your mind is always one step behind. The constant noise, endless notifications, looming deadlines, the pressure to be everywhere and do everything can leave you feeling scattered, overwhelmed, even exhausted. It's as if modern life has turned into a storm, and you're caught in the middle without an anchor. But what if I told you there's a way to find stillness, even in the chaos? A way to cultivate a mind so steady, so unshakable, that no external turbulence can throw you off balance. This isn't just wishful thinking, it's the very essence of Stoicism, a philosophy that's been guiding people toward inner peace for over 2,000 years. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That simple truth is the foundation of what we're about to explore, because Stoicism isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about transforming how you see the world, how you respond to challenges, and ultimately, how you reclaim your peace. And one of the most powerful tools Stoics use to reinforce this mindset, affirmations. These aren't just empty phrases or wishful mantras, they're mental anchors, carefully crafted to remind you of what's truly within your control. They draw from timeless Stoic practices like negative visualization, where you prepare for the worst to appreciate the present, and the dichotomy of control, which teaches you to focus only on what you can influence. Today, we're diving into 24 of these affirmations, each one a stepping stone to a calmer, more centered mind. Think of them as whispers from the Stoics themselves, guiding you back to clarity when the world feels overwhelming. Whether you're facing a stressful day at work, navigating personal challenges, or simply seeking a deeper sense of calm, these words are your toolkit. By the end of this, you'll not only understand their power, but also how to weave them into your daily life, so you can build resilience from the inside out. So take a deep breath. The storm around you doesn't have to become the storm within you. Let's begin. How often do you waste energy on things outside your influence? That knot in your stomach when your flight gets delayed, the frustration when someone cuts you off in traffic, the hours spent agonizing over a coworker's rude comment, none of it changes the outcome. Yet we pour so much mental effort into these external events, as if our worry could somehow rearrange the world to our liking. This is where Stoicism offers a lifeline, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus put it plainly, some things are within our power while others are not. Your thoughts, your actions, your choices, these belong to you. The weather, other people's opinions, the past. They don't, and the moment you internalize that distinction, a weight lifts. Think of it like sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic. You can't magically clear the road ahead, but you can choose whether to white-knuckle the steering wheel in rage, or use the time to listen to an audiobook, call a friend, or simply breathe. One approach drains you, the other recenters you. That's the power of focusing on what's yours to govern. The Stoics weren't suggesting we ignore life's challenges. They were teaching us to redirect our energy where it actually matters. Because anxiety thrives in the gap between what we want to control and what we can control. Close that gap and you reclaim your peace. So let's put this into practice right now. Grab a pen or open your notes app. Make 2 lists. 3 things you can control today, maybe your morning routine, how you respond to criticism, or setting boundaries, and 3 things you can't, like the stock market, a family member's choices, or whether it rains. See how just naming them shifts your perspective. That list isn't just an exercise, it's a map. The more you refer to it, the more you'll catch yourself before spiraling into what-ifs that don't serve you. This affirmation isn't passive resignation, it's active liberation. When you stop trying to move immovable objects, you free up strength to build the life you actually want. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his private journal, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." At first glance, that might sound like a paradox. How can an obstacle help you move forward? But this is the heart of Amor Fati, the Stoic practice of loving your fate, not in spite of the challenges but because of them. Think of it like fire shaping steel. The very resistance that feels like it's holding you back is what tempers your strength. Seneca put it even more bluntly, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Can you recall a time when a setback, a job loss, a rejection, a failed project ultimately led you somewhere better? Maybe losing that job forced you to build the business you'd always dreamed of, or that heartbreak taught you what you truly needed in a relationship. The Stoics weren't just preaching blind optimism, they were teaching alchemy, the art of transforming adversity into advantage. Because here's the truth, obstacles aren't roadblocks. They're detours pointing you toward growth if you're willing to see them that way. Consider the story of a musician who loses their hearing only to compose symphonies in their mind. Or an athlete whose injury teaches them patience, making them a wiser competitor. These aren't just feel-good stories, they're proof that the mind, when trained, can reframe anything. So right now, think of one challenge you're facing. Maybe it's a financial strain, a strained relationship, or a goal that feels out of reach. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this teaching me?" That subtle shift in language changes everything. It moves you from victim to student, from passive to empowered. This isn't about denying the difficulty. It's about recognizing that the struggle itself is where the magic happens. The weightlifter doesn't grow stronger by avoiding the barbell. They grow by lifting it again and again. So the next time life hands you resistance, remember, you're not being blocked, you're being prepared. And that reframe, that's the first step toward loving your fate, not just enduring it. Picture a storm raging outside your window, the kind where the wind howls, rain lashes against the glass, and it feels like the chaos will never end. But here's the thing about storms, they always pass. The clouds break, the sun returns, and what felt overwhelming in the moment becomes just another chapter in the story of your life. That's the essence of our next Stoic affirmation: this too shall pass. It's a reminder woven into the fabric of existence, one the Stoics held close as they navigated the unpredictability of being human. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome through wars and plagues, wrote in his private meditations, "Life is a river of passing events. No sooner does one thing appear than it is swept away." He wasn't being pessimistic, he was grounding himself in reality. Because when you truly internalize that nothing lasts forever, not your struggles, not your pain, not even your joys, you stop clinging so tightly to the roller coaster of life. You begin to see each moment for what it is, temporary, and that perspective, it's liberating. Think about a hardship you once thought you'd never overcome. Maybe it was a heartbreak that left you breathless, a failure that made you question your worth, or a loss that seemed impossible to bear. Yet here you are, having moved through it. Time didn't erase the experience, but it did soften its edges. The Stoics called this Primeditatio Melorum, the practice of mentally preparing for life's impermanence. By acknowledging that everything changes, you rob adversity of its power to devastate you. You start to see challenges as waves. They rise, they crash, and then they recede. Here's a question to sit with. What current worry of yours will still matter in 5 years? That argument with your friend, the project that didn't go as planned, the embarrassment you can't shake. Zoom out for a moment. How much of it will linger in the grand scheme of your life? This isn't about dismissing your feelings, it's about giving them context. Like a storm, emotions are real while they last, but they aren't permanent. And when you remember that, you can face them with steadier hands. So the next time you're caught in life's downpour, whisper this affirmation to yourself: this too shall pass. Not as a wish, but as a promise, one backed by every sunrise that's ever followed the darkest night. The Stoics weren't teaching resignation, they were offering you the ultimate compass. Because when nothing lasts forever, every moment becomes precious and every hardship becomes endurable. The storm will clear and you'll still be standing. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone's tone or words rubbed you the wrong way, and before you knew it, you'd already decided they were rude, dismissive, or just plain wrong? We've all been there, jumping to conclusions in the heat of the moment, only to realize later we completely misread the situation. Maybe your coworker's short email wasn't passive aggression but exhaustion after a sleepless night with a sick child. Or that friend who cancelled plans last minute wasn't blowing you off but battling anxiety they didn't feel comfortable sharing. Snap judgments are easy, understanding takes effort. And that's exactly why the Stoics placed such importance on withholding judgment, not just to be kinder to others, but to free ourselves from unnecessary frustration. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, put it bluntly: men are disturbed not by things but by the views they take of them. In other words, it's not what someone says or does that upsets us, it's our opinion about their actions that fuels the fire. Marcus Aurelius took this further in his Meditations, writing, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." That last line is the key. When we judge someone harshly, we assume we'd never act as they did in their shoes. But the Stoics remind us we're all human, flawed, and doing our best with the burdens we carry. Here's a practical way to apply this. Think of a recent time you felt wronged or irritated by someone. Now, list 3 possible reasons they might have acted that way that have nothing to do with you. Maybe they're grieving, maybe they're overwhelmed at work, maybe they're repeating patterns they learned in childhood. This isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about widening the lens so you respond from clarity, not reactivity. Because when you judge less, you create space for curiosity. And curiosity, that's where empathy grows. So today, try this experiment. Every time you feel the urge to label someone lazy, entitled, difficult, pause. Ask yourself, what part of their story am I missing? You might not always get an answer, but the act of asking changes you. It softens your edges, lightens your emotional load, and slowly rewires your default setting from critic to observer. And in that space between reaction and understanding, you'll find something unexpected: peace. Seneca once observed that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about that for a moment. How many nights have you lost sleep over a conversation that never happened? How many opportunities have you avoided because your mind painted catastrophe where none existed? Fear, at its core, is a story we tell ourselves, a projection of what might be, not what is. And the Stoics understood this better than anyone. They practiced something called Primeditatio Melorum, the deliberate rehearsal of fears, not to dwell on them, but to disarm them. By confronting worst-case scenarios in advance, they stripped fear of its power to surprise or paralyze. Take public speaking, a fear so common it outranks death in some surveys. The shaky hands, the dry mouth, the dread of forgetting your words, it feels visceral, inevitable. But what if, instead of avoiding the podium, you stood in front of a mirror and delivered your speech 10 times? What if you imagined the audience scowling, booing, even walking out, and then realized you'd survive it? That's Primeditatio Melorum in action. You're not inviting disaster, you're proving to yourself that you can face it. Seneca put it bluntly, "He who has courage to confront his fears has room to conquer them." Now consider a fear you've been carrying. Maybe it's the anxiety of a medical test result, the vulnerability of asking for a raise, or the uncertainty of starting over in a new city. How much of that fear lives in the actual moment, and how much is fed by the endless what-ifs your mind invents? The Stoics weren't denying life's risks, they were refusing to let imagination inflate them. When you rehearse the worst, really sit with it, you often find it's less monstrous than your mind made it seem. Here's a challenge. Pick one fear you've been avoiding and write down the absolute worst outcome you can imagine. Then ask yourself, could I live through that? You'll almost always find the answer is yes, and that realization, it's the first step toward reclaiming your power. Because fear isn't a force of nature, it's a choice to believe the story your mind spins. And you're the author. Scroll through any social media feed, and within seconds, you're bombarded with highlight reels, polished vacations, flawless meals, achievements stacked like trophies. It's effortless to fall into the trap of measuring your worth against these curated snapshots, as if your value fluctuates with every like or comment left unopened. But the Stoics would have dismissed this mindset entirely. Epictetus, who taught that freedom comes from within, put it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, your character isn't defined by applause or the lack of it. Consider this: when you post a photo, do you feel a pang of disappointment if it doesn't get as many hearts as you hoped? That reaction reveals a deeper habit tying your self-worth to external validation. Now imagine deleting the app entirely. No metrics, no comparisons, just you and your unobserved life. Would you still feel proud of that homemade meal you cooked? Would you still savor the quiet joy of a sunset walk if no one knew you took it? The Stoics called this autarkeia, self-sufficiency. It's the art of finding completeness within yourself, so others' opinions become background noise rather than your compass. Think back to the last time you felt genuinely content without anyone's approval. Maybe it was reading a book alone in a cafe, sketching in a notebook no one will ever see, or simply laughing at your own joke in the mirror. That feeling, unfiltered and unmeasured, is your birthright. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Why hand strangers the power to validate what you already are?" Here's a challenge for one day: do something meaningful without documenting or sharing it. Bake bread and don't post a photo. Write a poem and don't read it aloud. Notice how the act itself becomes purer when it's not performative. You'll start to untangle your worth from the illusion of outside approval. Because here's the truth no algorithm can quantify. You were enough before the first like, and you'll be enough long after the last one fades. The Stoics didn't seek followers, they sought freedom, and that begins with a single, unshakable affirmation: I am enough, not because the world says so, but because you choose to believe it. Stub your toe on a table leg, and the sharp jolt of pain is instant, your body's way of signaling danger. But what happens next is where the real choice lies. You can curse the table, replay the moment in frustration, even let it sour your mood for hours, or you can acknowledge the pain, shake it off, and keep walking. That split-second decision, to resist or release, is the difference between pain and suffering. The Stoics understood this intimately. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Pain is the body's alert system. Suffering is the mind's refusal to accept it. take rejection, whether in love, career, or creativity. The initial sting, that's natural, but the weeks spent ruminating on what you could have done differently, the stories you spin about your inadequacy, that's suffering. It's not the rejection itself that lingers, it's the meaning you attach to it. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming a philosopher, offered a radical perspective. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Imagine holding a hot coal with the intent to throw it at someone else. Who gets burned first? Your grip on resentment works the same way. Here's a practical experiment. Think of a recent disappointment, a missed opportunity, a harsh comment, a plan that fell through. Now ask yourself, what part of this pain was unavoidable, and what part did I create by resisting it? Maybe the job rejection was inevitable. The hiring manager had a nephew lined up for the role, but the weeks spent questioning your skills, that was optional. The Stoics called this the art of assent, learning to distinguish between facts and the judgments we layer onto them. Consider an athlete who twists an ankle mid-game. The injury is real, but whether they scream in defeat or calmly signal for a substitute determines their emotional aftermath. Pain is the signal, suffering is the volume knob. And you hold the dial, so next time life delivers a blow, pause, feel the pain, then ask, am I amplifying this with my thoughts, or can I let the wave pass without dragging me under? The table leg isn't plotting against you. The rejection isn't a verdict on your worth. The pain is real, but the suffering, that's a story you can rewrite. Ask yourself this: what clutter, physical or mental, are you carrying that no longer serves you? That stack of untouched books gathering dust, the grudges taking up space in your mind, the commitments you dread but keep out of guilt, they're all weights dragging you down. Seneca saw this clearly 2,000 years ago when he wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." He wasn't just talking about money. He was pointing to the exhaustion of clinging to things, possessions, relationships, even beliefs, that drain more than they give. Think of your mind like a closet. Every resentment you refuse to release, every outdated goal you haven't reconsidered, every just-in-case item you hold onto, just in case, becomes another item crammed onto the shelf. Soon there's no room for what truly matters. The Stoics practiced a form of minimalism long before it became trendy, not just with objects but with thoughts. Marcus Aurelius would journal each night, asking himself, "What useless things have I let occupy my mind today?" He knew mental clutter clouds judgment as surely as a dusty mirror distorts reflection. Consider the friend who only reaches out when they need favors, or the hobby you once loved that now feels like an obligation. Letting go isn't failure, it's making space for what aligns with who you are now. Like pruning a tree, cutting away the dead branches doesn't weaken it, it lets the healthy ones thrive. Seneca put it bluntly, "Until we have begun to go without, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are." You don't miss the weight of a backpack until you put it down. Here's a challenge today: choose one thing, physical or emotional, to release. Maybe it's unsubscribing from newsletters you never read, deleting a toxic group chat, or forgiving an old mistake, yes, even your own. Don't overthink it, just ask, does this still serve me? If the answer isn't a clear yes, let it go. The relief you'll feel isn't just lightness, it's freedom. Because the Stoics didn't preach detachment to deprive you, they taught it to free you, and in that space you create, that's where growth begins. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded subway during rush hour, people jostling, announcements blaring, phones buzzing, yet inside your chest, there's a quiet so deep it feels like a secret. That's the Stoic ideal of the inner citadel, a mental fortress where your peace remains untouched no matter how chaotic the world outside becomes. Epictetus, who knew firsthand how unpredictable life could be, put it this way: men are disturbed not by things but by the opinions they form about them. Death, for instance, isn't terrible. The idea of death as terrible is. Your inner citadel isn't built of stone or steel, it's built of perspective. Think about the last time someone tried to pull you into drama, a co-worker's gossip, a relative's complaint spiral, an online argument that burned hours of your time. In the moment, it might have felt impossible to disengage, as if walking away meant losing. But the Stoics would argue the opposite. Every time you say no to unnecessary conflict, you're reinforcing the walls of your inner sanctuary. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire while war and plague swirled around him, wrote in his private journal, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That's the power of non-negotiable peace. It's not about avoiding life's storms, but about refusing to let them dictate your weather. Consider this: peace isn't passive. It's an active choice, a series of small but deliberate actions. It's muting notifications during dinner, leaving a group chat that thrives on negativity, or politely excusing yourself from conversations that feel like emotional quicksand. The modern world will always offer you chaos. Your job is to stop offering it your attention in return. So here's a question to carry with you today. What's one thing or person that consistently chips away at your peace, and what's one boundary you can set to protect it? Maybe it's a friend who vents endlessly but never listens, or a habit of scrolling news that leaves you rattled. Boundaries aren't walls to keep life out, they're gates you control. And when you decide your peace isn't up for debate, you reclaim something priceless: the freedom to choose where your energy goes. The chaos outside will always exist, but inside, that's your domain. Guard it fiercely. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, wrote something that echoes Stoicism's deepest truth: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. That gap, often no longer than a heartbeat, is where your freedom lives. It's the split second after your boss criticizes your work, after your partner snaps at you, after life throws something unexpected in your path. Most people never notice that space exists. They react on autopilot, as if emotions are inevitable eruptions rather than choices. But the Stoics, they trained themselves to widen that gap like a muscle, until their reactions became responses deliberate, thoughtful, and theirs alone. Epictetus, who knew more than most about enduring hardship, put it bluntly: "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Imagine two colleagues receiving the same critical feedback in a meeting. One leaves fuming, convinced their manager has it out for them. The other pauses, considers which points might be valid, and decides to use the critique to refine their project. The feedback itself was neutral. It was the interpretation that determined the outcome. That's the power hidden in the gap. Think about the last time someone's words stung you. Maybe it was an offhand comment about your weight, your parenting, or your career path. Your face flushed, your chest tightened. Those physical reactions were instant. But what happened next? Did you lash out, retreat into silence, or take a breath and decide how to engage? That's where the magic happens. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal to slow himself down in these moments, writing reminders like, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." He wasn't suppressing emotion, he was choosing its direction. Here's a challenge: replay a recent reaction you wish you'd handled differently. Maybe it was snapping at a barista over a wrong order, or stewing for days over a friend's cancelled plans. Now rewrite it. How could you have used that space between stimulus and response? Perhaps you'd have asked the barista if they were having a tough day instead of assuming carelessness. Maybe you'd have texted your friend to check in rather than constructing a narrative of neglect. The event itself doesn't change, but your relationship to it transforms entirely. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about recognizing that emotions are signals, not steering wheels. Anger can fuel change instead of destruction. Hurt can foster connection rather than withdrawal, and in that tiny, expansive space between what happens and what you do next, that's where your agency and your peace resides. Every morning before dawn, Marcus Aurelius would sit in quiet reflection and begin his day with a simple but profound ritual, naming the things he was grateful for, not grand achievements or material wealth, but the ordinary gifts easily taken for granted. The warmth of blankets in winter, fresh water to drink, the sound of birds greeting the sunrise. He wrote in Meditations, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This wasn't just optimism, it was a strategic recalibration of perspective, because gratitude to the Stoics wasn't a fleeting emotion, it was a discipline, a way of rewiring the mind to see abundance where others saw lack. Seneca took this further, urging his students to set aside a certain number of days to eat only the plainest food, wear the coarsest clothes, and ask yourself, is this the condition I so feared? His point. Scarcity is often an illusion, a trick of comparison. The person with a roof overhead who longs for a bigger house suffers just as much as the one without shelter, because desire stretches infinitely unless anchored by gratitude. Think of how a simple cup of coffee tastes after a sleepless night, or the relief of a cool breeze on a sweltering day. These aren't small joys, they're evidence of how much we already have when we pause to notice. Consider the modern paradox. We live in an age of unprecedented comfort, yet anxiety and dissatisfaction thrive. Why? Because the mind habituates to luxury. The first time you slept on a high-thread count sheet, it felt like heaven. Now you barely register it. The Stoics called this hedonic adaptation, the tendency to take blessings for granted once they become routine. But here's the antidote: deliberate gratitude, not as a passive feeling but as an active practice. Try this tonight. List 3 things you'd miss deeply if they vanished tomorrow. Not your car or your job title, the fundamentals. The way your dog greets you at the door, the taste of your favorite fruit in season, the ability to walk without pain. Suddenly, the scarcity of not having the latest gadget or a vacation photo to post pales next to the abundance right in front of you. Gratitude doesn't deny life's challenges, it puts them in context. As Seneca observed, no man is poor who can look at the stars and feel wonder. The universe offers infinite gifts to those willing to see them. The rest is just noise. Think of your emotions like weather patterns rolling in with thunderous intensity one moment, fading into quiet stillness the next. A storm doesn't define the sky, just as your emotions don't define you. They're temporary, impersonal, moving through you like clouds across a vast horizon. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly when he wrote, "You are not your thoughts or feelings. You are the observer behind them." That distinction is everything, because when you stop identifying with every emotional gust, when you stop saying, "I am angry," and start saying, "I notice anger passing through me," you reclaim sovereignty over your inner world. Take anger, for instance. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Your pulse spikes, your grip tightens on the wheel. That initial surge is biology, pure and simple. But what happens next? If you fuse with the emotion, it escalates. How dare they? People are so reckless. Yet if you step back, there's anger. Interesting. What's underneath it? The charge dissipates. You might even chuckle at how quickly your body reacted to something so trivial. This isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about refusing to let them hijack your clarity. The Stoics called this prosoch mindful attention. It's the practice of witnessing emotions without becoming their puppet. Consider a time you felt overwhelmed by sadness. In the thick of it, the weight might have felt endless, as if you'd never know joy again. But looking back, you can likely see it for what it was, a wave that crested, then receded. Emotions are data, not destiny. They're signals about your needs, your boundaries, your values, not verdicts on your worth. Epictetus, who taught that freedom begins with separating what's ours from what merely happens to us, put it bluntly: don't let the force of an impression carry you away. Say to it, hold on, let me see who you are. Here's a challenge for today. Pick one emotion you commonly resist: frustration, envy, anxiety, and simply observe it next time it arises. No judgment, no story, just curiosity. Ah, there's frustration. What does it feel like in my body? What triggered it? That small pause between feeling and reaction. That's where your power lies, because emotions are visitors, not tenants. And the more you practice letting them come and go without overstaying their welcome, the quieter and wiser your mind becomes. Seneca once cautioned his student Lucilius with these piercing words: "You are your own hardest taskmaster. How often do you berate yourself for not reaching some imagined ideal? The flawless presentation, the perfectly organized home, the effortless mastery of a new skill." Perfectionism isn't pursuit of excellence. It's a form of self-sabotage disguised as virtue. The Stoics saw this clearly. While modern culture obsesses over outcomes, likes, promotions, final product, Stoicism redirects us to something far more nourishing: the dignity of effort itself. Epictetus, who taught that wisdom grows like a tree, put it plainly: no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Consider learning to play the piano. The beginner who pounds the keys in frustration because their rendition of a sonata lacks the grace of a concert pianist has missed the point entirely. The beauty lies in the daily return to the bench, the calloused fingertips, the gradual shift from halting notes to fluid phrases. Progress isn't just inevitable, it's the entire purpose. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, wrote in his private journal, "Do not be disgusted, discouraged, or dissatisfied if you don't succeed in doing everything according to right principles, but when you've failed, return again." Not if you fail, but when, because stumbling isn't deviation from the path, it is the path. Now think of your own life. Where have you withheld celebration because something wasn't perfect? Maybe you dismissed a month of consistent workouts because your jeans still fit snugly, or you downplayed finishing a draft because it wasn't Pulitzer-worthy. Here's a radical question. What if you measured success not by distance from some unreachable standard, but by devotion to showing up? The writer who pens one paragraph today is closer to their book than the one waiting for inspiration. The parent who loses their temper but apologizes has practiced more virtue than the one who pretends they never err. This isn't about lowering standards, it's about redefining them. The sculptor doesn't curse the block of marble because it isn't yet David. They honor each chip of the chisel. So tonight, try this. Write down 3 areas where you've made progress, however slight, then 3 where you've demanded perfection. See the disconnect. The Stoics didn't worship flawless statues. They revered the hands that shaped them, day after patient day. Your effort isn't a means to an end, it's the living proof of your commitment. And that's already worthy. What if you received a letter today with just 2 words, 1 month, no explanation, no context, just the stark reminder that your time here was finite? How differently would you move through your days? The Stoics called this practice Memento Mori, remembering death, not to dwell on darkness, but to illuminate life. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." At first, that might sound morbid. But lean closer. This isn't about fear, it's about focus. Mortality isn't a threat, it's the ultimate clarifier, stripping away the trivial to reveal what truly matters. Consider how you'd spend that hypothetical final month. Would you finally take that solo trip you've been postponing? Call the estranged sibling you've been meaning to reconcile with? Sit quietly in the garden instead of doom-scrolling. Notice what doesn't make the list, obsessing over promotions, polishing your curated persona online, or holding grudges over minor slights. Death has a way of exposing our bullshit. The ancient Stoics knew this. They kept skulls on their desks, not as macabre decor, but as visceral reminders. This breath isn't guaranteed. How will you use it? Now imagine applying just 10% of that urgency to your ordinary Tuesday. What changes? Maybe you linger over coffee with your partner instead of rushing out the door. Maybe you write that novel chapter instead of waiting for someday. The poet Mary Oliver captured this perfectly when she asked, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Memento Mori isn't about counting down the days, it's about making the days count. Here's a challenge: pick one area where you've been hesitating, a difficult conversation, a creative project, a leap of faith, and ask yourself, if not now, when? Not in some abstract future, but now, while your heart still beats and your hands can still shape the world. Because the great irony is this: the more fully you embrace life's brevity, the richer each moment becomes. The sunset isn't more beautiful because it's fleeting, but your attention to it is. That's the gift of Memento Mori, not a countdown, but a wake-up call. And the alarm, it's ringing. Ever notice how the loudest voice in the room rarely holds the deepest wisdom? There's a reason for that. Gossip, reactive comebacks, unsolicited opinions. They're like fireworks, bright and attention-grabbing in the moment, but ultimately just noise fading into the night. Now picture the opposite: the colleague who listens more than they speak, the friend who responds to insults with calm silence, the leader who chooses measured words over impulsive reactions. That's real power. Epictetus nailed it when he said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak." Stoicism doesn't just tolerate silence, it reveres it as a superpower. Take arguments, for instance. Imagine someone baits you with a snide remark about your work. Your pulse quickens, your cheeks flush, every instinct screams to fire back. But what happens if you don't? If you simply let their words hang in the air like smoke, dissolving without fuel? That's not weakness, that's control. Marcus Aurelius described it as the quiet strength of the olive tree, unshaken by storms because its roots run deep. Your silence isn't empty, it's intentional. It's the space where dignity outlasts pettiness. Think back to a time you bit your tongue when every fiber of you wanted to retaliate. Maybe it was during a family debate that was veering into personal attacks, or a social media thread where others were piling on. That restraint, it wasn't passive. It was a conscious choice to protect your peace, to refuse to let someone else's chaos dictate your energy. The Stoics called this hexis, the discipline of aligning actions with principles, not impulses. Here's a challenge. For the next 24 hours, practice the art of necessary speech. Before speaking, ask, is this kind? Is it true? Is it useful? You'll be stunned by how much falls away. The office drama you'd normally fuel with a juicy detail, the complaint about traffic that changes nothing, the unsolicited advice no one asked for. Silence filters the trivial from the essential. And in that quiet, you'll find something unexpected: clarity. Because when you stop scattering words like confetti, you start hearing the music beneath the noise. So when did silence last serve you? Not as a retreat, but as a strategic pause, a way to honor your energy and amplify your impact. The world will always try to pull you into its chatter. But remember, the quieter you become, the more you can hear, and what you hear in that stillness, that's where your true strength lies. Think of a river, how it carves through rock, not by force but by persistence. How it adjusts its course around boulders without complaint. How it swells in rain and thins in drought, yet never stops moving forward. That's the Stoic vision of nature, not just trees and seasons, but the invisible current of rationality that shapes all things. Marcus Aurelius captured it perfectly. Let your actions flow as a river flows, carried on by the movement of nature. To align with nature isn't to hug trees or live off-grid, it's to recognize yourself as part of something vast and intelligent, then move with its rhythm rather than against it. Imagine you've spent weeks planning a beach getaway, flights booked, itinerary set only for a storm to cancel everything. The modern instinct, rage at the weather app, curse the airlines, spiral into, why does this always happen to me? But nature doesn't conspire against you, it simply is. The Stoic response: adapt like water. Maybe you turn your living room into a cozy staycation campout with blankets and tropical music. Or use the unexpected free time to finally start that book you've been postponing. Resistance creates suffering, alignment creates possibility. This principle goes deeper than rearranged plans. Consider your own biology, the heartbeat you don't command, the lungs that expand without your permission. Your body is nature, operating by laws far older than your worries. When you fight insomnia with frustration, you're at war with your nervous system. But when you accept, my body needs rest right now, not force, you cooperate with it. Same with emotions. Denying grief or anger is like denying tides. Yet when you let them rise and fall naturally, they pass through you instead of getting stuck. Here's a question to carry today. Where are you forcing when you could flow? Maybe it's resisting a colleague's messy but creative process, or white-knuckling through a life phase that simply requires patience. Nature doesn't hurry, yet everything gets done. The bud opens when it's ready, the tide recedes without being pushed. Your turn. Next time you hit an obstacle, pause. Ask, how would water move here? Not with resignation, but with intelligence, finding the path of least resistance because it knows the sea always waits. That's the secret. The river never doubts it will reach the ocean, neither should you. Seneca once wrote a letter that cut straight to the heart of human suffering. What madness is it to punish your own weakness by another's strength? Think about that for a moment. Every time you measure your life against someone else's highlight reel, their promotions, their relationships, their seemingly perfect mornings, you're not just stealing your own joy. You're handing them the keys to your self-worth. And the Stoics, they saw this trap coming 2,000 years ago. Epictetus put it bluntly: if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. In other words, your path is yours alone. Comparing it to someone else's isn't just pointless, it's a distraction from the work that actually matters. Consider social media for a second. You scroll past a friend's vacation photos, azure water, golden sand, and suddenly your cozy weekend at home feels inadequate. But here's what you don't see: the argument they had with their partner that morning, the credit card debt from the trip, the exhaustion hiding behind their sunglasses. Comparison isn't just the thief of joy. It's a master illusionist, making you trade your reality for someone else's carefully staged fiction. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire, still reminded himself daily, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Not your neighbor's thoughts, not your co-workers, yours. Now think about your own life. What's one strength you consistently overlook because it feels too ordinary? Maybe it's your patience with a difficult family member, your ability to find humor in mundane moments, or the quiet discipline of showing up for your workouts even when no one's watching. These aren't small things, they're the raw materials of an unshakable character. The Stoics called this autarkeia, self-sufficiency rooted not in what you own, but in who you are. Here's a challenge for the next week. Every time you catch yourself comparing, pause. Ask, what's uniquely mine in this moment? Maybe it's the way your hands know exactly how to soothe your child's nightmares, or how you notice the first crocus pushing through winter soil. These aren't metrics for LinkedIn or Instagram, they're the silent, sacred threads of a life well lived. And the moment you stop measuring them against someone else's ruler, that's when you'll finally see their worth. Picture this, you find a wallet on the street with $500 inside, no ID, just cash. Do you pocket it, rationalizing finders keepers? Or do you track down the owner, knowing it might mean hours of effort with zero reward? That split-second decision reveals more about your character than any resume ever could. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Stoicism doesn't debate morality, it demands it, because integrity isn't just about grand gestures, it's the sum of 1,000 small choices where no one's watching. Take the ancient story of Diogenes, the philosopher who wandered Athens with a lantern in broad daylight, searching for an honest man. His theatrics made a piercing point. True integrity is rare precisely because it's inconvenient. It's the employee who admits their mistake even when it could cost them a promotion. The student who reports the extra points they were mistakenly given on an exam. The parent who apologizes to their child for losing their temper. These aren't just nice actions, they're the bedrock of a life aligned with Stoic virtue. Here's what most people miss. Integrity isn't a sacrifice, it's liberation. Every time you choose honesty over convenience, you strengthen what the Stoics called arid excellence of character. Think of it like muscle memory. The more you practice returning lost items, owning your errors, or speaking truth when lies would be easier, the more natural it becomes. Epictetus taught that virtue is the only true good because it's the one thing no external force can strip from you. Lose your job, your virtue remains. Face criticism, your integrity stands intact. So let's make this practical. Today, identify one arena where you've been cutting corners. Maybe it's exaggerating your accomplishments, avoiding an uncomfortable conversation, or glancing at someone else's test answers. Now ask, what would the most principled version of me do? Not the smartest or most successful version. The one who sleeps soundly knowing their actions match their values. That's the power of this affirmation. Every choice for integrity isn't just about that moment. It's about building a self you can respect when you look in the mirror. And in a world that often rewards shortcuts, that quiet self-respect, that's the ultimate advantage. Consider an oak tree in winter, bare branches stretching toward the sky, seemingly lifeless. Yet beneath the surface, roots dig deeper, gathering strength for the spring no calendar can rush. Nature never apologizes for its pauses, never hurries the bud to bloom before its time. This is the essence of our next affirmation. Patience is power, not passive waiting, but active endurance, the kind Seneca described when he wrote, "Time discovers truth." It tests character, because anyone can stay calm when things move swiftly. The real test comes when life forces you to sit with uncertainty, when progress feels frozen, and all you can do is trust the process. Take career growth, for instance. Imagine working years for a promotion, mastering new skills, taking on extra projects only to watch colleagues advance while you're told, "Not yet." The modern world screams hustle faster, as if patience were weakness, but the Stoics saw it differently. To them, endurance wasn't resignation, it was strategy. Like a farmer who knows seeds can't be yanked upward to hasten harvest, they understood that some things require delay. That "not yet" isn't rejection, it's refinement. Here's what we often forget. Patience isn't empty space between milestones. It's the furnace where resilience is forged. Think of a sculptor patiently chiseling marble. Every strike seems insignificant in the moment, yet collectively they reveal the masterpiece hidden within the stone. Your delays, their chisels. That project stuck in limbo, that dream deferred. They're not proof of failure, but ingredients of depth. Marcus Aurelius faced this daily as emperor, writing, "The impediment to action advances action. Even stagnation serves a purpose. It teaches you what truly matters enough to keep pursuing." So let's bring this home. What test of patience are you facing right now? A creative endeavor that won't coalesce, a relationship that needs time to heal. Write it down, then ask, how could this delay be strengthening me? Maybe it's teaching you to detach from outcomes, or revealing who stays loyal when rewards aren't immediate. Patience isn't just about enduring the wait, it's about mining it for wisdom, because the oak doesn't resent winter, it uses it, and when spring finally comes, the growth is unstoppable. There's a moment in every life when you stand at a crossroads. One path says, "This happened to me." The other says, "This happened because of me." The first keeps you stuck in the passenger seat of your own story. The second, it hands you the wheel. This is the heart of Stoic accountability, not blaming fate for your struggles, but asking what role you played in them. Epictetus, who knew more than most about hardship, put it bluntly, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that defines you. Victimhood is passive, ownership is power." Take the entrepreneur whose first business crumbles. They could spend years cursing the economy, their partners, even luck itself. Or they could dissect their own missteps, the rushed decisions, the ignored red flags, and turn failure into curriculum. The Stoics called this prohersis, the ability to choose your interpretation of events. Marcus Aurelius modeled this daily, writing in his journal, "The obstacle is the way." Not around the obstacle, not despite it, through it. Because when you stop seeing setbacks as injustices and start seeing them as feedback, every stumble becomes a step forward. Here's the twist: owning your story isn't about self-blame. It's about self-honesty. Think of a time you missed a deadline. Maybe you blamed a chaotic workplace, valid but incomplete. Now dig deeper. Did you procrastinate, underestimate the task, avoid asking for help? These aren't indictments, they're insights. The Stoics didn't keep journals to punish themselves. They wrote to uncover patterns, to spot where their own choices, not the gods or fate, shaped their outcomes. So let's make this practical. Grab a pen and finish this sentence. I've been telling myself the story that happened because of. Now cross out the second blank and replace it with one hard truth about your own role. Maybe the strained friendship wasn't just their neglect, it was your unwillingness to voice needs. Maybe the career plateau isn't just a bad market, it's your resistance to learning new skills. This isn't about shame, it's about agency. Because the moment you stop editing your past to spare your ego is the moment you start writing a better future. Your life isn't a series of random events, it's a manuscript, and you hold the pen. What chapter will you rewrite today? When was the last time you told yourself you'd start something? Learn Spanish, launch that side hustle, finally declutter the garage, only to find months later you're still explaining why you haven't gotten around to it. There's a brutal truth the Stoics understood: intentions are meaningless without execution. Marcus Aurelius drilled this into himself daily, scribbling in his journal, "Don't talk about what a good man should be. Be one, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect now, because character isn't built in the safety of plans, it's forged in the friction of action." Take fitness goals. You can research workout plans for weeks, debate the merits of keto versus paleo, even buy those expensive running shoes, but none of it matters until you actually lace them up and step out the door. The Stoics called this praxis the vital shift from theory to practice. Epictetus, who saw students endlessly philosophize without applying their lessons, warned, "If you didn't learn these things to practice them, what did you learn them for?" Knowledge untested by action is like a sword never unsheathed, impressive on the wall but useless in battle. Here's the uncomfortable gap most people ignore. Between knowing what's right and doing it lies the entirety of your growth. Think about your own life. What's one thing you've repeatedly said you'd change? Maybe waking earlier, quitting nicotine, or setting boundaries with a draining friend, yet keep postponing. Notice how the mental energy spent justifying the delay often exceeds what the action itself would cost. That's the paradox Stoicism exposes. Inaction isn't restful, it's exhausting. So let's strip this down to its bones. Right now, identify one small step related to that lingering intention, not the whole project, just the next physical motion. If it's writing a book, open a blank document and type one sentence. If it's repairing a relationship, send a 2-line text. "I've been thinking about you." Coffee this week. Action breaks the spell of paralysis because momentum begets momentum. As Seneca observed, while we wait for life, life passes. The world doesn't need more eloquent speeches about change. It needs people willing to sweat through their first workout, send their clumsy first draft, or awkwardly initiate that hard conversation. Not because success is guaranteed, but because the attempt itself is the transformation. So here's your challenge. In the next 24 hours, complete one action you've been overthinking. Not perfectly, just persistently. The road isn't paved with good intentions. It's built brick by brick through the stubborn, unglamorous work of showing up. Imagine your hand suddenly refusing to cooperate with your arm, fingers clenching shut when the wrist needs to turn, thumbs stiffening as you reach for a cup. The absurdity of that image captures exactly how the Stoics saw humanity, not as isolated individuals, but as interconnected parts of one vast body. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." Every act of cruelty or indifference isn't just harm to another, it's a fracture in the whole we all share. This was Stoic cosmopolitanism, the radical idea that borders, status, even language barriers can't sever the invisible threads binding us together. Think of the last time a stranger's small kindness shifted your entire day. Maybe it was the barrister who remembered your order after one visit, or the commuter who silently handed you a tissue when they saw you fighting tears on the train. Those moments aren't just niceties, they're proof of our innate reciprocity. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the understanding that another's joy or pain ripples through the collective like vibrations through a spiderweb. When you help someone carry groceries, when you listen instead of waiting to speak, you're not just being good, you're fulfilling your biological design. Now consider the opposite, the times you've averted your gaze from homelessness or shrugged off a colleague's struggle with "not my problem." That's not just indifference, it's self-sabotage. Like a cell hoarding oxygen until it suffocates the very body it depends on, isolationism starves the system that sustains us. Epictetus, born a slave, knew this intimately. You are a citizen of the universe, and no less than the leaves or the stars, you have a right to be here. Your existence is relational by nature. The air you exhale feeds the tree's breath fills your lungs. Separation is illusion. So here's your challenge today. Look for one chance to be someone else's unexpected grace. Pay for the coffee behind you in line. Email a former teacher who shaped you. Leave a book you love on a park bench with a note, "For whoever needs this." These aren't grand gestures, they're reminders of reciprocity, tiny affirmations that no one thrives alone, because the hive survives not by the strength of individual bees, but by the certainty that when one falters, another will share its pollen. That's not idealism, it's ecology, and your role in it, however small it feels, it's irreplaceable. When did you last sit in silence, not just the absence of noise, but true stillness, where the only voice you hear is your own thoughts settling like sediment in an undisturbed pond? In a world that equates busyness with importance, the Stoics understood something revolutionary. Wisdom doesn't shout over the crowd, it whispers in the quiet. Seneca captured this perfectly when he wrote, "Retire into yourself as much as possible. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." The process is mutual. Solitude wasn't escapism to the Stoics. It was the workshop where insight was forged. Consider journaling, a practice Marcus Aurelius used to distill his thoughts into meditations, one of history's most enduring works of philosophy. He didn't write for an audience, he wrote to listen, to untangle the knots of his own mind. Think of a time you wrestled with a decision, circling it in conversations with others, only to have the answer crystallize during a solo walk or a shower. That's not coincidence, it's the alchemy of stillness transforming chaos into clarity. Noise drowns out your inner compass, silence recalibrates it. Now imagine applying this deliberately. What if, instead of reaching for your phone during a lull at the coffee shop, you let the silence stretch? No music, no podcast, no scrolling, just you and the hum of your own reflections. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, like stepping into a cold lake, but beneath that initial shock, a clarity modern life rarely affords. The Stoics called this hesychia, the sacred pause where the mind stops reacting and starts seeing. Here's a challenge tonight. Ask yourself one question that deserves undivided attention. Maybe it's, what fear have I been avoiding naming? Or, where am I sacrificing long-term peace for short-term comfort? Don't force an answer. Just hold the question in your mind like a pebble in your palm, observing its weight and edges. Wisdom isn't always about finding solutions. Sometimes it's about learning which questions matter. And those, they rarely surface in the noise. They reveal themselves in the quiet spaces between breaths, in the stillness where your deepest knowing waits. Your mind is a time traveler, constantly leaping backward to replay old regrets or forward to rehearse disasters that never come. But here's the paradox. While your thoughts dart between past and future, you, the real, breathing you, are always here. Always now. Epictetus cut through this illusion with one razor-sharp question. Why do you chop up time into tiny pieces and lose yourself in the past or future when the present is all you ever possess? The answer stings because presence is hard. Dwelling on yesterday's mistake or tomorrow's worry gives the illusion of control, while the present demands something far more vulnerable, your full attention. Consider something as simple as eating an apple. Most of us devour it while scrolling through emails, barely registering the crunch, the sweetness, the way the juice hits our tongue. But what if you tried this instead? Hold the apple first. Notice its weight, the way light reflects off its skin. Take one deliberate bite. Chew slowly, tracing the flavors as they unfold, the tartness near the core, the honeyed notes near the peel. That's not just eating, that's being. The Stoics called this prosoch, mindful attention to the current moment, because they understood a radical truth. The present isn't where life happens. It's all that happens. Now pause and ask yourself, where is my mind right now? Is it replaying that awkward conversation from this morning, fretting over next week's deadline? Or is it here with these words, with the rhythm of your breath, with the faint hum of the room around you? The difference between those states isn't just focus, it's freedom. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, concentrate every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. Not because the task itself was sacred, but because the act of fully inhabiting it was. Here's the challenge. Pick one routine act today: washing dishes, walking to your car, tying your shoes, and do it as if it's the most important thing in the world. Not because it is, but because you are. The water on your hands, the grip of your laces, the way your weight shifts with each step, these aren't distractions from life. They're the fabric of it. The past is memory, the future is imagination, but now is where you live, and the more you return to it, the more you'll realize you've never actually left. So here we are, 24 affirmations, each one a tool forged in the fires of Stoic wisdom, now yours to carry forward. But let's be clear, these aren't just words to recite and forget. They're calls to action, mental habits to rehearse until they become as natural as breathing. Stoicism was never meant to be studied like a textbook. It was designed to be lived, to be sweat through and stumbled over and practiced imperfectly until it reshapes how you move through the world. Epictetus, who knew the grind of transformation firsthand, put it best: no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Progress isn't about grand, sweeping changes. It's about the daily return to the work, the quiet commitment to showing up even when results aren't immediate. Think of these affirmations as your mental gym. You wouldn't expect to lift 100 pounds on your first day at the gym or run a marathon without training. The mind is no different. Start small. Maybe today you catch yourself spiraling over something outside your control, a delayed flight, a rude comment, and instead of reacting, you whisper, "I control my actions, not external events." Or perhaps you pause before bedtime to reflect, "What useless thoughts cluttered my mind today?" These are the reps that build resilience, the incremental shifts that compound over time. Now here's your challenge. Choose one affirmation from this list to focus on this week. Just one. Maybe it's "the obstacle is the way" when you face a setback, or "I am enough" when comparison creeps in. Write it on your mirror, set it as your phone wallpaper, or repeat it like a mantra during your commute. Then come back here and tell us which one resonated most. Where did it lead you? Because Stoicism isn't a solo journey, it's a conversation across centuries, and your voice belongs in it. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. It's presence. It's the courage to return to these words when the storm hits, trusting that each repetition is another brick in your inner citadel. The world will keep turning, chaos will keep coming, but you'll be ready, not because the affirmations shielded you from life, but because they reminded you of the strength you've had all along. Now go, pick up your tool and start building. The work begins today.